Recording.
Cool. So tonight, tout le monde, Daryl, are you in I'm guessing Daryl's anglophone, but I'll start in French for my clients here in Quebec. So tout le monde, bienvenue. Mon nom est Ryan Hawkins, je suis naturopathe et j'ai été entraîneur pendant plus que 15 ans de ma vie. So I was a trainer and I'm a naturopath. Tonight I wanted to talk about a topic that it's springtime and a lot of people are feeling better. They're looking to get more energy, get outside, start doing some more sports, especially up here in Canada and in Quebec where we get a lot of snow. So it's a great time to kind of clean out your house, but it's also a great time to clean out your bodies. So we're going to be talking a little bit about les sciences en arrière de la détox, la détoxification. Est-ce que c'est un mythe? Est-ce que c'est pas vrai que nos corps, ils se détoxent tout seuls? Do our bodies not just detox themselves in anyway? Do we really need to do anything? And kind of just clear that up because it's a topic that a lot of people have questions about. There's a lot of information out there that might not be great and also information that is maybe bad and detoxes that don't really do anything, to be quite honest. Now, they sometimes get people healthier, but it's not a real detox. So we're going to talk about a little bit of that. And I've had some experience with that, but one of my mentors, one of my best mentors and a very good friend, actually, Dr. Bob Rakowski has a ton of experience when it comes to detoxing. He's coached athletes in every major sport that I know anyway. And he's helped them turn it around and get new contracts as fast as possible. And he's also worked with people who are losing a foot due to diabetes or have gotten a really bad prognosis of cancer. So he's really done both ends of the spectrum, and he's really good at helping people get healthy very quickly. He's a doctor of chiropractics. He's a clinical certified nutritionist. C'est aussi, by the way, pour ceux qui sont francophones, Dr. Bob, c'est un chiro, un docteur en chiropratie, c'est un diplomate avec le Conseil international de la kinésiologie appliquée. C'est un nutritionniste clinique certifié. Et I think you're a registered nurse as well, eh?
I've got degrees in engineering, biology, nursing, chiropractic, postgraduate nutrition, acupuncture, kinesiology. So I've dotted a few I's and crossed a few T's.
Yeah. So without any further ado, I think that he's the best man to talk about this topic, and he's lectured across the world. Il a lecturé, il a donné des conférences par-dessous tout le monde, la globe au complet, sur les topics de détoxification et autres. So voilà, Dr. Bob.
Merci beaucoup, mon cher Ryan. So, I like the title that you created. It, is this a myth or is it a miracle? Well, it's certainly not a myth. And since you asked the question, do our bodies detox? They absolutely do. I would have people at seminars ask me, when should I stop detoxing? And I'll pull out my stopwatch and I say, well, let's do a little experiment. Let's all stop detoxing right now. And I let people know that the most basic element of detox is to exhale. And so for most of us, if we stop exhaling, we'll be dead within 5 minutes. But I think there's a pearl diver in Fiji that now can go up to about 18 minutes. But let's put it this way, in 20, 25 minutes, the whole world would be dead if we stopped detoxing. So it's something we need to do. And when we show the science of it, you will begin to realize that this could be an absolutely powerful, and when done right, is my favorite starting point for clinical intervention. We used to say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, but now that we've done brain studies and images, we now know that a picture is worth 2 million words. So you had a great introduction. I've got a beautiful family. I've been married to Kelly for 34 years, 3 beautiful children, 3 wonderful grandchildren. I've treated world champion athletes from every single major professional sport. I've also had not just feet that were given a death sentence because they were going to cut off that foot 2 days from the picture that was taken, but look at it 2 weeks and ultimately 17 months later, we made a massive difference. And I always tell people, I don't really care what organ system it is in your body, whether it's your brain, your heart, your liver, your lungs. There are three distinct zones of cells. There's cells that are dead. Well, there's nothing we can do about those. There's cells that are fine. There's nothing we need to do about those. But in between are cells that are functional but not functioning. And if we can improve function, we can improve function. And I have taught over 10,000 hours of seminars to doctors, 6 different continents of the world, just not Antarctica. But, maybe someday we'll do that. But, most of us have heard this phrase, cleanliness is next to, think about that. How would you complete that phrase? Cleanliness is next to godliness. And if we go back, a couple thousand years in Greek mythology, the goddess of good health, her name was Hygeia. In other words, hygiene. So it is true that cleanliness is next to godliness. Now there's the sad reality about our toxic world. We'd love to think that everything's clean and wonderful and beautiful skies and beautiful earth and plants and people. But the data shows that that is clearly not true. So by the numbers, there are over 80,000 registered toxic chemicals in the environment. And here's the sad reality. When they test to see if a chemical is toxic, they use one chemical at a time. So, think about how many letters you can make with a 26-letter alphabet. Think how many combinations of toxins you could have with 80,000 toxins. So there's something called the human toxin inventory. Go for it, Ryan.
So, for those who are francophones, and pour ceux qui sont francophones, qu'est-ce que Dr. Bob vient de dire, c'est que beaucoup de recherches démontrent qu'il y a au-dessus de 80 000 différents produits chimiques dans l'environnement. Et beaucoup d'entre vous, probablement, vous demandent, OK, mais oui, mais ils ne sont pas testés, ces aliments-là? Oui, absolument, vous avez raison. Beaucoup entre eux, pas tous, sont testés. Ceci étant dit, quand ils sont testés tout seuls, ne sont pas en lien avec d'autres toxines. Que souvent, même dans un produit de beauté average de L'Oréal a 3 différents produits toxiques dedans. So, c'est vraiment l'effet de toutes les toxines mises ensemble et non seulement un souvent. Go ahead, Dr. Bob.
All right, thank you. And by the way, just let me know. You can actually even just go like this and I'll see you because I see you on my screen. But so there's something called the human toxin inventory. And they started this right about 50 years ago, 1972. And someone decided, why don't we take fat samples from cadavers and surgical patients and let's see if there are toxins in them. And they found out very simply that absolutely everybody has toxins, every man, every woman, every child. And they estimate that we all have at least 700 toxins in our system at all times. And, by definition, a toxin is something that's a mild poison. It's going to disrupt function and or structure. And if you get enough, you can have a problem. And this was a very powerful study from a group called the Environmental Working Group. They looked at umbilical cord blood. And so before these babies ever took their first breath, every sample they looked at had at least 200 toxins in it. And we could talk about that at length, but now there are certain environmental toxins that are linked to brain challenges, including autism. And if we go back 50 years ago, the incidence of autism was 1 in 10,000. By 2021, it was 1 in 41 and 1 in 27 boys. So this is something that's absolutely out of control. And this one here, so we can go back more than a decade, and pediatrics showed that studies specifically link autism to toxin exposure in early pregnancy. So a poisoned baby's brain is going to be challenged. The #1 cause of death on the planet is actually malnutrition. That was in 2020. You might have heard it was something else, but this is decades running. We know that malnutrition is the top cause of death. And toxins are estimated to be responsible for 25% of all illness and or death. Go for it.
So, pour les francophones, dans le fond, qu'est-ce que Dr. Bob vient de dire et de noter qu'il y a une grosse étude qui a lié des problèmes d'autisme à des toxines que la mère a été exposée pendant qu'elle était enceinte. Alors, on sait qu'il y a un lien extrêmement fort, puis même une corrélation très, très forte entre l'autisme et les toxines. Et c'est probablement le cause de 25, c'est pas probablement, c'est la cause de 25% des mortalités annuelles au travers le monde. Go ahead.
All right. So you look at this graph rate from life expectancy, and over the course of 110 years, roughly, in 1900, people in the U.S. died at an average age of 47.3. And then we go forward 110 years, and they've added more than 30 years. The average age of death was 78.2. And we're going to show that there was a very significant advance in science that made all that difference in the world. If we were at a seminar, I would ask people to guess what was that. And unless you've heard this before, I've never had anybody actually guess it right. They start talking about, well, maybe it was antibiotics, maybe it was vaccines, maybe it was some kind of emergency medicine, but it wasn't any of that. And I'll show the data on it. So if we go back to the bubonic plague in the Middle Ages, estimated to kill somewhere between 30 and 50% of the population, you might think that it was a really bad organism called Yersinia pestis, but actually it was the toxins, it was the rats, it was the fleas, and the fleas carrying this organism. So if you ask the question, I don't like Wikipedia for a lot of things, but they give a good answer here. So what caused the Black Plague? Well, conditions in London were ideal for the plague. The streets were narrow and they were flowing with sewage. So when you have all these toxins, all this human waste around and all these rats, you're going to have people that are getting sick from infectious disease. Do you want to translate that?
Oui, dans le fond, Dr. Bob disait que dans tous les séminaires qu'il a donnés à tous les docteurs médicaux au travers le monde, les chiro, il a toujours demandé, vous croyez c'est quoi la cause de la peste noire? Et souvent dans mon... Puis pourquoi est-ce qu'on a maintenant 30 ans plus d'espérance de vie depuis les derniers 100 ans? Puis beaucoup de monde pense que c'est les antibiotiques ou les vaccins. Mais actuellement, qu'est-ce qu'il va démontrer dans une couple de secondes? C'est actuellement la sanitisation de l'eau, de les égouts. Puis, dans le fond, si tu regardes ici, ça dit sur Wikipédia, c'est quoi qui a causé la peste noire ou la pandémie de la peste noire. Puis, dans le fond, ça dit que les conditions à Londres étaient idéales à cause que les rues étaient étroites. Puis, il y avait littéralement la merde dans les roues tout le temps. So, voilà.
All right. So now, interestingly enough, this is a picture of New York City in 1881. And I might ask, what do you think that is in the middle of the streets there? And then I'll get a little closer. So the major mode of transportation was horse and buggy. And it was actually estimated that horses would drop 2.5 million pounds of manure into the streets of New York every single day. So now we go back to the Black Plague. The streets were narrow and flowing with sewage. And certainly that was the case in New York and big cities in the US. So the advancement was really the invention of the automobile and then the mass production of the Model T. So look at death rate from infectious disease. This is right out of CDC, Centers of Disease Control. At 1900, 80 of 100 deaths or 800 of 1,000 deaths were from infectious disease. And then look, you'll see a very steady decline in death rate from infectious disease. The only exception was the 1918 flu pandemic, but there was a 75% reduction in death rate from infectious disease before antibiotics, and a 91.25% reduction in death rate from infectious disease before vaccines, and none since. So it was really sanitation and hygiene that improved health and longevity. Do you want to translate that, or are we good to keep going?
Yeah, no. So, comme vous pouvez voir, ici est actuellement le graphique qui vient du Centre de contrôle de maladies des États-Unis. Puis, qu'est-ce que la graphique dit? Si tu le gardes au début, 800 sur 1000 morts dans les années 1900 étaient de la maladie infectieuse. Et ça a descendu drastiquement, presque à 75 jusqu'à la première utilisation de la pénicilline. Il était déjà descendu à les mortalités de la maladie infectieuse de 75 puis presque 91,25 avant le premier vaccin, puis ça n'a pas descendu du tout depuis. Puis actuellement, j'ai checké les chiffres il 2 ans, puis ça n'a pas amélioré encore. So, ça a pas mal resté là. So, c'est vraiment l'hygiène personnelle puis la sanitisation qui a vraiment sauvé le monde de les maladies infectieuses. Perfect.
All right. So the question I ask of my students, my patients, my doctors, if cleaning up the external environment led to such a dramatic increase in health and longevity, well, what will happen when we clean up the internal environment? And we've seen it consistently. Sometimes people with very severe illnesses, it just goes away, and we may never know what we could prevent. So again, 1/4 of all health challenges on planet Earth are related to the toxins. And the next 7 slides are basically the symptoms of chronic poisoning, which include fatigue, sleep disturbance, intestinal distress, breathing issues, allergy symptoms, inflammatory process, including pain and fatigue, confusion, and even anger and anxiety and edginess. And so, I tell people we've known this for over 25 years, that those are the symptoms of chronic poisoning. But as I've said, if we got rid of these symptoms, I'd probably have to do something else, because this is exactly what people are walking into my clinic with: fatigue, sleep disturbance, intestinal distress, allergy symptoms, headaches, confusion, and anxiety. You want to translate that?
Je pense que c'est assez, I think it's very clear, but yeah, je pense que c'est assez clair. Dans le fond, ça dit que on vient de passer au travers tous les symptômes directement reliés dans la recherche que tu peux voir en ce moment, Clinical Chemistry 1996. C'est la léthargie, la confusion mentale, l'irritabilité, perturbation, l'inconfort dans les intestins, l'inflammation et la fatigue. So, il a dit que si on éliminait tous ces symptômes-là, il y aurait besoin de faire de quoi d'autre au niveau de sa pratique, parce que c'est tout le monde, puis je suis d'accord, c'est 90% de mes clients qui rentrent avec ces problèmes-là, ou la fatigue, ou les intestins, ou ils ont mal partout. Voilà.
All right. So I like to share this graph because the bar graph in green shows blood flow at rest, and in yellow represents under heavy exercise conditions. And I tell people that that's basically fight or flight. So if you're in a fight or flight mode, you'll actually shift the blood like you would under heavy exercise. And the organ that gets most blood at rest is actually the liver, followed by the kidneys, followed by the brain. And so clearly our body's highest priority is actually detoxification. So I've said for years, if you're not sure what to do with the patient, detox. When in doubt, detox. And again, we've seen so many dramatic changes across the board when we put people on it. And when people are stuck, and I use this analogy, you could be stuck in the snow, since you have snow still there in Quebec. But imagine this person's stuck in the mud, and then you come by and you give them a little push, and they hit the gas. Well, they'll actually dig a deeper rut for themselves. So we want to give them a very strong push, hard enough, long enough, intense enough, so that they can climb out of the rut that they're in. And that's what we do with a 7 to 10 day detoxification. So the thing I've said for decades at this point is bodies respond to frequency, duration, intensity, quality, and timing of stimuli. Go for it.
So, je pense que Dr. Bob a fait une analogie parfait quand on parle de la santé de l'humain. Ou que ce soit la santé mentale ou que ce soit la santé physique. Tu as vu sur le dernier slide un char ou un auto qui était pris dans beaucoup de boîtes ou de la mud, right? So, puis son analogie était, si je me pointe en tant que personne, exactement, cette photo-là, et j'y donne juste un petit pouce en arrière, je pousse un peu, puis il frappe la gaz, il va se creuser un trou encore plus profond. So, il ne faut pas juste se présenter des fois quand quelqu'un est malade avec un petit Honda Civic pour le sortir de la boîte ou de la neige. Tu veux assurément des fois amener un gros tracteur pour assurer que la personne sorte puis il ne se creuse pas un plus gros trou. Puis qu'est-ce qu'il dit tout le temps? C'est que les corps physiques, la biochimie répond à la fréquence, la durée, l'intensité, la qualité, puis quand tu prends un certain stimulus, que ce soit l'alimentation ou que ce soit les suppléments ou autres.
All right. So I like this graph because it shows many, but certainly not all of the known nutrients and processes that are involved in detoxification. So, I always tell people it's nutrient dependent. You need comprehensive across the board, good quality nutrition. You need energy, and keep in mind that when the body's in a fight or flight mode, the liver does not get a lot of energy. So sometimes we need to do a simultaneous stress reset along with that. And then when we look at phase 1 of liver detoxification, there's the family called the cytochrome P450 enzymes, and over 75 of those have been identified. Enzymes are proteins, so people need adequate protein, adequate nutrition, adequate energy. And then it also helps them to be detoxified and alkaline and modulating the inflammatory process, and have a stress reset in place and everything else. And we can get the body wonderfully in position to clear the toxins that it needs to clear to feel better.
That's good, Dr. Bob.
Okay. So what I've recommended now, this is over 3 decades, this has been one of my go-tos in clinical practice. When I have people do a detox, there's different types of medical foods, functional foods that have the nutrients that are designed to support all aspects of detoxification. But some of these are designed to help the body clear heavy metals, and some are designed to clear estrogens and toxic estrogens, and some of them are designed to clear, fungal toxins and gut-related toxins, and even toxins that the body makes through prolonged inflammatory process. But what I like to do is give people, multiple shakes every day, really depending upon their size of body, because these are things that mix in water as a medical food shake, and then support nutrients and a diet of only organic nutrients for anywhere from 7 to 10 days. And if we go back to the pictures of my athletes, I think every athlete that you would have seen in the picture that I showed, and it's my starting point. When I have an elite athlete, I'll ask them, do you want to get better, faster, slow? And they almost always say, I want to be better yesterday. So I'll often do an intense detox, hourly support nutrients, and the results at times can be absolutely remarkable.
Yeah, I'll cut in there, Dr. Bob. So, dans le fond, Dr. Bob il utilise souvent une détoxification de 7 à 10 jours intensif. Puis, il a utilisé ça avec ses athlètes mondiaux, que ce soit des Olympiens, il a suivi Tyson Gay, que ce soit Evander Holyfield dans la boxe, ou n'importe qui autre. Souvent, il demande à la personne est-ce que tu veux aller mieux? Puis la personne dit souvent, je veux aller mieux hier. Puis mes clients souvent aussi. So, c'est vraiment un protocole pour que quelqu'un ait des résultats très vite, se sente mieux très vite, et que ça fait vraiment une différence quantifiable au niveau biochimique.
So Ryan, I'll use this one as an example, and I think I heard you say Tyson Gay. So that happens to be Tyson Gay right there. And we put him on a really intense detox protocol.
Tyson last race beat Usain Bolt head-to-head in the 100 meters at the time of 9:83. Fair start. Tyson Gay out very quickly. Usain Bolt trailing by a meter. Tyson Gay, is he going to make history? He does. The only way to beat Bolt is by putting pressure in front of him. Tyson Gay stuck to the script today and did it. How many of you out there had this on your predictions? Because I didn't.
So that's a super fun testimonial. And I tell people, he signed $1 million endorsement before his sweat even dried. But when we start looking at all the paths of detoxification, not just the liver, but we've got the skin, the intestines, the kidneys, the lungs, all of those are part of detox. And we could give a much longer lecture, but my favorite superfood, Ganoderma lucidum, is very, very powerful at helping all of the detoxification routes. When you look at it, over 2,000 published medical studies going back 60 years, no known toxicity, no known drug interaction, and it's been studied against some of the worst toxins in the history of humanity. So this case here was called the case of the Frozen Addicts. These were a group of drug abusers in Southern California in the 1980s, and they injected a synthetic heroin called MPTP, and the next day they all woke up with Parkinson's disease. Well, when they went to the hospital, the doctors said, well, we would like some of that drug. And they said, what, are you crazy? Why would you want that? We have Parkinson's from it. They said, well, maybe someday we can find a cure for Parkinson's. Well, in 2018, they finally studied MPTP and Ganoderma, and they found that it was the only thing that they knew of that could prevent MPTP created Parkinson's and help the neurons to recover. There's a horrible liver toxin called carbon tetrachloride. Over time, that causes liver failure. But when they give Ganoderma with the carbon tetrachloride, the liver is not damaged and the patient doesn't develop liver failure. STZ was a type of chemotherapy used for pancreatic cancer. They stopped using it because it would kill the insulin producing cells of the pancreas and cause essentially type 1 diabetes. But when they give Ganoderma with that, the animals don't get diabetes. And then finally, this was actually a mouse study, not a human study. They gave toxins that would cause horrible neural tube defects, where about 80% of the animals were either born dead or paralyzed. But when they gave them Ganoderma, they basically reduced that incidence to about 20%. Go for it, Monsieur Ryan.
So, guys, Dr. Bob est en train de parler de un de mes herbes préférées. C'est actuellement le roi des herbes. C'est nommé le roi des herbes. Le Ganoderma lucidium, ou d'autres personnes le connaissent peut-être par reishi, qui est le nom japonais. Mais comme vous pouvez voir, il y a énormément d'études, au-dessus de 2082 études sur PubMed, beaucoup de recherches, beaucoup de sciences qui le prouvent. Puis il a juste démontré un couple de différentes études en lien avec la toxicité. Un en étant un groupe d'addicts dans le sud de la Californie qui ont injecté un héroïne synthétique. Puis, ça les a protégés de les effets secondaires de cette héroïne synthétique que induit actuellement, cette héroïne synthétique induit la Parkinson's. Alors, quand ils donnaient la Ganoderma, ça les protégeait. Maintenant, il y a une toxine appelée la CCI4 que, quand pris à long terme, empoisonne le foie. Le Ganoderma peut régénérer le foie puis empêche la destruction de les cellules hépatiques. Ça protège aussi en bas à gauche contre le diabète de type 1. Et quand ils ont donné sur telle souris un toxine qui était très bien connu à produire des problèmes incroyables de colonne ou du cerveau, comme la paralysie, comme la spinal bifidus et autres. ça les protégeait énormément, ces souris-là, en place de 79% de les souris qui étaient nées avec un problème. Quand ils étaient donnés la Ganoderma avec, c'était seulement 21%. So, comme tu peux voir, c'est très efficace.
And, one of the beautiful things is the world wants Ganoderma, so there's a big market for it. This is what most of the competition sells, but this is ours, USDA certified, organic, EcoCert, kosher, halal, the best Ganoderma with the best quality certifications and then patented processes. And, it's estimated again at $2.5 billion a year market. The world wants Ganoderma. And this is where I think we really win because we have it infused in coffee and tea, along with capsules, things that people do every single day. And the thing about coffee, coffee drinkers never need to be reminded, they never plan to quit. So it's a beautiful way to nourish the body and support detoxification with literally every sip.
Yeah, and they don't have to, it's like, it's not even buying another supplement for a lot of people. It's just like, oh, I'm just buying other coffee. It's just different coffee.
A better coffee for sure. And while we're going to talk about coffee, one thing that I tell people, and sometimes it's a little bit hard to imagine, but there's something called a coffee enema. And, there was a book, Wellness Against All Odds, the story of 30 cancer patients, all who beat cancer with nothing but natural remedies. And as part of their program, they would do 8 daily coffee enemas. So the reason I show the picture of the colon is there's something called the portal plexus. There's the blood supply from the colon goes directly to the liver. So when you put coffee in your backside, it goes straight to the liver. The liver dumps bile and toxins. And I've seen people, drop their liver enzymes 75 points in a single coffee enema. So this can be very, very powerful. And it's simple enough. You use the premium Ganoderma coffee. You get one of these enema bottles, you pour out the saline solution, and you replace it with room temperature coffee. And that works really, really well. I have a fun testimonial that I can play as well, if you'd like that, or do you want to pause?
Oui,
for a
dans le
moment?
fond, Dr. Bob, il parlait de quelque chose que tout le monde ici va peut-être se lever le nez puis faire comme « Ah, non, je ne ferai jamais ça. Wow, c'est dégueulasse. » Mais je l'ai déjà fait, puis peut-être beaucoup de monde vont me juger, mais c'est correct, tu peux me juger. C'est un lavement du côlon avec du café. Puis, il va faire un témoignage ici avec un client, mais j'ai déjà vu personnellement une grande amélioration de ma santé et avec des clients, des changements dramatiques dans leur enzyme hépatique, dans le sang. Et c'est quelque chose, entre autres, que je vais faire avec mon père bientôt. Puis on va voir qu'est-ce qui arrive avec lui. Mais voici le témoignage de Dr. Bob. So go ahead.
All right. So sometimes when we put people on a detox, sometimes they feel worse before they feel better. And so this woman had severe rheumatoid arthritis, and medicine wasn't giving her any hope. But we put her on a detox. Initially, she felt very bad, but by the time I filmed this, she was feeling so much better, and she basically got her life back. So I'll play the video.
Okay, we are rolling. It is May 13, 2013, the first day we saw Miss Marcy Reistrumper. It was February 20 of 2013. So what did you come in with originally, Marcy?
I had rheumatoid arthritis, or was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, achy in my hands, my wrists, my feet, my knees, swollen wrists, swollen fingers,
Okay. And so medically, I guess they just basically gave you anti-inflammatory drugs.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So now we're not even quite 3 months later, almost 3 months. Mm-hmm. So 0 is no change in your wellness and 100 is perfect ideal. How much better are you?
I'm probably 80, 90.
Okay. And are you taking any medications?
No.
All right. So what do you think of the program so far?
I love it. It's great. I've done the diets and I've taken the supplements, and I feel waking up this morning, I feel really great. I can open the peanut butter jar without having to flinch. I can play with my kids.
Do you remember your first week where we did the initial detox?
Yes.
I wrote in quotes what you said when you came in the second time. What did you say?
I said, I feel awful, 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 awful.
Yes. So we had a bunch of those that we wrote and put it in quotes. And so now looking back, was it worth it?
Yes. So yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel from where I was there to where I am today, it's just totally different. I mean, I feel so much better. I feel I have energy. I'm getting up in the morning, getting out of bed, great, playing with my kids, having a, really feeling good.
Do you have advice for future patients?
Stay with it. Really, I mean, it's a commitment. It really is. But if you think about how you feel, and then where you are now, it's just so worth it.
Do I have your permission to share this information with doctors, students, and patients everywhere?
Yes.
Any conditions on that?
If you could put some makeup on my face.
Well, we can't do that. But other than that, are we okay with using it? Excellent. Thank you so much.
All right. So
Je pense que c'est assez clair pour tous mes clients francophones, mais dans le fond, elle dit qu'il est 80% mieux après 3 mois. She did her intensive detox was 1 week, right?
well, we brought her back at 1 week. I might have done another one maybe a month or so later. But, she felt, as she said, awful, 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 awful. And at which point I said, not a big surprise. We ran some other lab values and we could see that there were a lot of things improving. But sometimes people feel worse before they feel better. And that's why I play that one.
Yeah. So, pour les francophones ici, dans le fond, quand elle a fait son détox, elle se sentait beaucoup pire les premiers couples de jours. Puis elle a dit à Dr. Bob, je me sentais terrible, 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 terrible. Mais après 3 mois, elle a dit qu'elle est 80% mieux. Au début, elle avait de l'arthrite rhumatoïde dans ses mains, dans ses genoux, dans ses pieds. Elle n'était pas capable de jouer avec ses enfants. Elle a dit, après les 3 mois, maintenant, elle peut ouvrir un pot de beurre d'arachide sans avoir plein de douleurs, sans flincher. Ça, c'est vraiment une qualité de vie, une grosse amélioration in the quality of life.
All right. Should we open up for questions? I see that Janelle typed something in the chat about, collagen. Well, there's no collagen in organo products, but collagen is readily available. I would definitely recommend getting a really good, clean source. And since you're in the US, I can help you with that if you're interested. But, collagen's popular now, and it seems to be doing good things for connective tissue. And, like everything else, quality matters. So you want to get a good source.
So, est-ce que Floriane, Carl, Isabelle, est-ce que vous avez des questions? Carl? Oh. We can't hear you.
You could type in chat or unmute.
Type it in chat. Yeah, Carl. Floriane, si tu avais des questions, ou Isabelle, or Daryl, do you have any questions?
Oui, moi, je me demandais,
Oui.
la dame dans la vidéo, elle a fait un détox de... C'était quoi son processus?
Okay. So I think that's probably a good question, Dr. Bob. C'est quoi? She asked, what was the process that the woman did? C'est quoi le processus qu'elle a utilisé? What did you do with her?
So I would use a detox product, which are shakes, and that would be the predominant source of what I call her macronutrients. And she would do that and organic vegetables. So probably 3 or 4 shakes a day, an unlimited amount of organic vegetables. I also use the Ganoderma lucidum, very powerful to help with the detox, helps with rheumatoid arthritis. I likely added a multivitamin just to make sure we crossed all the bases with nutrition. Omega-3s, there's a form of activated omega-3s known as resolvins. I didn't have that for her for that program, but I use it ever since that became available in 2015. I also use a probiotic and then a combination of vitamin D3, K2. And I'm very complete. If the patient's able to do all those things, we want them to do all those things. And by the way, I have a video on my YouTube channel about autoimmunity. And there's a few other strategies to help with autoimmunity and a couple other nutrients. something called DHEA, which is a prescription item in Canada, another thing called periliseed that you can get in Canada, and certainly strategies to keep the gut healthy helps with autoimmune disease.
So, pour mes clients francophones, dans le fond, qu'est-ce qu'il a fait? Il a utilisé un shake qui est complète, qui a tous les aliments qu'on a vus tout à l'heure, nécessaires pour le foie de faire ces phases de détoxification. Il a utilisé le galon de développement lucidium dans les doses assez fortes. Souvent, Dr. Bob va suggérer, puis je l'ai déjà fait, puis je le donne à mes clients tout le temps, un capsule à chaque heure que vous êtes éveillé. Il utilise aussi des oméga-3 activés. Maintenant, activés, c'est des oméga-3 super puissants appelés du SPM Active qui contrôle énormément le processus inflammatoire. Il va utiliser aussi d'autres choses dépendant de le budget du client. Mais ça, c'est la base. Il va aussi utiliser du D3 si la personne n'est pas dehors, si la personne n'a pas assez de D3 dans le système. Et une couple d'autres choses dépendant de chaque cas, mais ça, c'est la base. Ganoderma, a functional medical food, and SPM Active is really the base, and then he will usually adapt it après.
I see that Carl asks any types for detox or alkaline diet. And so keep in mind, all the functional medical foods are alkaline. Ganoderma is very alkaline, and we do organic vegetables, which are alkaline. So it's very good for you to know that, because creating more alkalinity in the body helps the body to detoxify more thoroughly, completely, and hopefully without as many challenges.
So, Carl, il est parfaitement bilingue, mais pour mes clients francophones, les produits de détoxification sont tous alcalins déjà. Évidemment, les légumes bio sont alcalines. Et la Ganoderma, c'est probablement l'herbe la plus alcaline sur la planète Terre. Si je ne me trompe pas, I think Ganoderma is the most alkaline herb on the planet.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Can I ask you a quick question?
Of course.
So, pour mes clients francophones, de toutes mes formations, je demande Dr. Bob une question, toutes mes formations, puis de tous des docteurs médicaux que j'ai déjà parlé, puis j'en ai beaucoup d'amis de docteurs qui sont docteurs médicaux, personne parle du pH. So, I said, in all my functional medicine courses and all of my other courses, and even when I talk to medical doctors, not many people talk about pH. And it's something that was very big in naturopathy, but not anywhere else. But I've seen it change people's lives. Why is that it's not talked about anywhere else? And what do you have to say about that?
You know, I used to teach a full weekend on pH. And there's over, probably at this point, near 100 years of data, if you dig for it, supporting alkalizing the body. So it's not a new concept. And I tell people that acid is the #1 toxin in the body. So it's estimated we're made of 50 trillion cells. When oxygen goes into the cell and energy production happens, carbon dioxide comes out. Carbon dioxide adds to water in the blood to form carbonic acid. And so, 50 trillion cells doing that maybe 1 trillion times a day, that's a lot of acid. All of our elimination routes get rid of acid. And we have at least 12 different buffering systems to buffer acid. And I don't know why medicine doesn't look at that, but like you've said, when I make a good program to alkalize the person, that's where the changes are the most profound. And that's what we did with Tyson Gay. So, when I did an assessment on him, it was clear that he was a little too acid. And I looked at his coach. I said, does Tyson slow down after 60 meters? He said, more than he should. Why do you ask? And I said, well, his acid alkaline buffers aren't right. If we change that, he'll be faster after 60. And by the way, we also found that we could make his nervous system respond better with the stress reset. So we got him faster off the line. And so faster off the line and faster after 60. And you saw the results. He beat Usain Bolt. So, very powerful.
So, juste pour récapituler, si vous n'avez pas compris, il ne sait pas pourquoi c'est pas parlé ou il n'y a pas une conversation dans la littérature médicale parce que L'acide alcalin, on le connaît depuis plus que 100 ans. Il y a du recherche scientifique pour au-dessus de 100 ans maintenant. Puis c'est probablement, it is your method that you say when you attack a pH is probably the strongest change you get, right?
Yeah. And by the way, the sickest people are the most acid and the healthiest people are the least acid.
So, les personnes qui sont le plus en santé, qui évaluent, sont le moins acides, puis les personnes le plus malades sont ceux qui sont le plus acides. So, c'est vraiment attaquer ce système qui fait le plus de différence. Puis c'est ça, quand tu as vu Tyson Gay tout à l'heure dans la vidéo battre Usain Bolt, c'était exactement ça qu'ils ont attaqué avant, dans les semaines avant la course. Does anybody else have any questions? Florian, was that good? Okay, so Dr. Bob, for those in the States, maybe you can mention how, like, okay, well, this is great, like, but what do I do now? And maybe you can, give a quick overview of what you would do. And if you were a patient, how to reach out to you, what are we going to do? And then I'll do the same.
Sure. So it depends on how you want to be a patient. So my website is thedrbob.com, thedrbob.com. And I always tell people, sometimes we can have a conversation and I put together a protocol. We have contracts with labs all over the United States. If we decide that we want to order some tests, then we order tests. And then if we find something that really needs to be addressed, well, we customize the program. Or it's possible you could say, all right, I think I want to try just a basic detox. I don't think I need a consult. You're welcome to do that too. We can get you the best, functional foods, medical foods to detox, buffer it with Ganoderma, and give you a write-up on how to do it. However you want to get healthy, we're happy to help you. If you need more help, we'll help you more. If you need less help, well, then we'll just direct you to the right products to get.
Come on in, take. Perfect. So I think that's clear. Pour les personnes ici à Québec, c'est pas mal la même stratégie que Dr. Bob. Si vous voulez une consulte, j'utilise l'évaluation de Dr. Bob au niveau urinaire. J'utilise les mêmes méthodes. C'est mon mentor. Je fais pas mal les mêmes affaires que lui. Alors, si vous voulez juste faire le détox, j'ai un groupe de détoxification qui va commencer dans à peu près 1 semaine et demie. Pas le lundi qui s'en vient, mais l'autre d'après, parce que vous avez le temps de commencer, d'acheter les produits, tout ça. So, on peut juste vous mettre dans le groupe, vous donner le protocole, le spécifier un peu à vos besoins, dépendant de votre corps, dépendant de plein d'affaires. Puis on pourrait commencer comme ça. So, c'est vraiment pour vous. Et vous pouvez me contacter. Ou Dr. Bob, si tu veux rentrer en contact avec Dr. Bob, tu peux y rentrer en contact aussi. Does anybody else have any other questions specific for Dr. Bob? I might have one, but whether it be another health concern, anything. No? Well, I've got one for you while we're waiting.
Okay.
I have a friend. He or she may or may not be here, but he or she may not or may have trouble with seasonal affective disorder, where they have a lot of trouble when it comes to the winter months, like really deep into January and February, especially up here in Quebec. Obviously, the person is very smart, used to be a nurse, vitamin D, taking magnesium, B6. We've done through a few protocols, but we just went through a detox and he's still having problems sleeping. What would you say is your best strategy for seasonal affective disorder?
Well, there's a few things. You mentioned the sleep, and you kind of went through my best strategies, and so lack of sunlight, we're beginning to realize that light is a critical nutrient. And I had a conversation with a patient today. She used to have huge problems with seasonal affect disorder. And she finally realized that in the winter, a tanning bed made her feel significantly better. But we want to look at all the biochemical pathways. The magnesium is important. The activated B vitamins are important. The stress reset is important. The great omega-3s are important. And when it comes to sleep, sleep is critical for the brain and body. And, years ago, I learned about something called a sleep window. And I was teaching a seminar where we'd bring in live patients. And this woman came in and she said, I don't sleep. I can't sleep. In the last 20 years, I've never slept more than 3 hours in a night. Well, I thought, okay, that can't be. I think you'd be dead if you only slept 3 hours a night. But I looked at her, I said, well, if you're only sleeping 3 hours, that's all I'll give you. And she looked at me, she said, what? I said, yeah. So let's say tonight you go to bed at midnight, not a minute earlier. You wake up at 3 a.m., not a minute later. You need to stay up all day. You can't take any stimulants and you can't take any naps. Now, the next night, if you want to go to bed a little earlier and you want to sleep a little later, you can do that. Well, by the end of the week, she was sleeping 8 hours a night. And so, now most of us can actually track our sleep with these, little Fitbits or, watches or even rings that tell the story. But sleep is very important. I like the idea of the sleep window. I like melatonin at bedtime, but there might be some good labs to look at it. And so, especially when it's a seasonal affect disorder, I start thinking that, the ultraviolet light, possibly some tanning beds, 10 minutes, 3 times a week might make a nice difference. Because if they're better the rest of the year, it might be a sunlight issue.
Cool. I forgot about the sleep window. That's really great for a lot of people that don't sleep well. Then they have a nap in the day and then they take like 4 Yeah. Okay. Well, if no one has any other questions, I really want to thank you, Dr. Bob. By the way, guys, Dr. Bob is a very busy man. He has 4 different successful businesses. He has grandkids. Il y a plein de choses à faire. Puis honnêtement, il a fait ça comme un cadeau pour moi. C'est mon mentor. C'est un très bon ami. I really appreciate you taking the time and helping me out with this and helping the people that'll watch it. So thank you very much. And I will definitely be sharing this a lot.
And I'll put it on YouTube and I'll send you a copy.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Good night, all, and God bless.